Year 1973. The world came to an abrupt halt. Oil valves were shut, and the arteries of modern life dried up. The West learned, painfully and unmistakably, how dependent it was on the power flowing from Middle Eastern oil by waiting in endless lines at gas stations. Today, there are no lines for black gold. Yet a far more valuable, rarer, and far more quietly critical resource has taken its place: silicon. The true power of our age no longer flows through massive oil pipelines, but through channels measured in nanometers, thinner than a strand of hair. The wars fought, embargoes imposed, and alliances formed for oil 50 years ago are now being repeated for silicon produced from a handful of sand. Those who lose this new struggle will pay not only with economic crisis, but by being excluded from the New World Order altogether. In 1973, U.S. President Nixon famously declared, "America's independence is energy independence." At the time, the strategic resource was oil. Whoever controlled it held the heart of the global economy. Half a century later, the rules of the game and its fuel have changed. In 2023, the world consumed semiconductors worth $1 trillion. This figure corresponds to nearly half of global oil trade. The difference is critical. Oil has been part of our lives for a century, but chips are now everywhere. From the phone in your pocket to your car's braking system, from the refrigerator in your kitchen to the precision targeting systems of nuclear missiles, everything is structurally dependent on these tiny components. However, this dependence stems not only from their widespread use, but from the very nature of their production capacity. Silicon in its raw form is not a strategic commodity. It acquires geopolitical significance only when transformed into semiconductors through advanced manufacturing processes. True power lies not in the quantity of silicon, but in the ability to control it at the atomic scale and convert it into high-precision chips. This transformation is not an industrial activity that can be easily substituted under free market conditions. The strategic value of a chip derives not from the raw material it contains, but from the accumulated institutional knowledge embedded in design, production, and supply chains, from decades of engineering experience, and from the strict industrial discipline that sustains this process. Cutting-edge production capacity cannot be built with capital alone. It requires a globally integrated supplier ecosystem and durable quality regimes. For this reason, semiconductor manufacturing is not a capacity that can be rapidly activated in emergencies or substituted in the short term. From the perspective of states, semiconductors have become not a matter of commercial competition, but a core issue of national security and strategic sovereignty. This structural reality also explains why semiconductor production is geographically concentrated in an extremely limited area. Today, 60% of global chip production takes place on the island of Taiwan. Even more strikingly, 90% of the most advanced chips are produced by a single company, TSMC. Russia's entire reserves or Saudi Arabia's oil fields could be relocated or alternatives created. But as of today, there is no alternative to TSMC's factories. The United States and Europe have launched extensive reindustrialization programs in recent years to reduce dependence on external semiconductor supply. However, the semiconductor sector is a long-term, high-risk investment area that does not yield short-term results. Facilities whose foundations are being laid today will reach operational maturity and generate meaningful global capacity only with limited impact before the early 2030s. Therefore, the current dependency is likely to persist as a managed risk rather than being eliminated in the medium term. The United States and Europe have also initiated comprehensive reindustrialization programs to reduce external dependence in semiconductor production. In the United States, the CHIPS and Science Act, and in the European Union, the European Chips Act, are concrete examples of this strategic shift. However, semiconductor manufacturing is not an investment field that delivers rapid results. The steps taken under these programs aim not at immediately securing supply, but at long-term technological sovereignty. Their impact on global production balances is expected to remain limited before the early 2030s. U.S.-China competition entered an overt strategic confrontation through semiconductors in October 2022. The U.S. administration imposed extensive export restrictions on advanced semiconductors, AI accelerators, and the critical equipment used in their production. These measures should be understood as part of a long-term containment strategy aimed at structurally limiting China's access to advanced technology rather than as mere commercial competition. The sanctions cover not only final products, but also design software, manufacturing equipment, and skilled human capital. In this respect, the restrictions aim to hinder China's ability to develop advanced artificial intelligence and high-performance computing capacity in the short and medium term. From the U.S. perspective, semiconductors are no longer a trade item, but a core component of national security architecture. Companies such as NVIDIA have become the heart of the artificial intelligence revolution, rising among the world's most valuable corporations. Yet geopolitical realities have overtaken commercial ambitions. As a result of the sanctions, direct sales to the Chinese market were halted. Instead, deliberately cut down chips that comply with legal limits were produced. This illustrates that technology is no longer merely an economic commodity, but a strategic weapon. China, in turn, has placed a massive $500 billion budget on the table to break this encirclement. However, in the semiconductor world, capital alone is insufficient. The EUV lithography machines required for producing the most advanced chips are manufactured exclusively by the Dutch company ASML, and their sale to China is prohibited. China now faces the same kind of desperation experienced by countries attempting to escape oil dependence in the 1970s. Except this time, the monopoly is guarded far more tightly than desert oil wells. Taiwan stands between two giants directly atop the fault line of the global economy. Every military exercise conducted around the island constitutes a serious source of uncertainty and fragility for the global economy. The production lines of giants such as Apple, NVIDIA, and AMD pass through this island. A potential conflict would not merely be a regional war, it would mean the stoppage of the heart of global technology. The Western world is acutely aware of this danger. New factories rising in Arizona's red deserts, Intel's investments in Ohio, and Europe's own chip legislation all reflect efforts to break this dependency. Yet while factories take years to build, establishing a mature ecosystem takes decades. In the age of artificial intelligence, 3 years can be equivalent to a century in historical terms. The 1973 oil crisis taught states the economic consequences of strategic dependencies. Today, a similar threshold is being crossed through semiconductors. Modern economies and military capabilities have become dependent not on energy supply, but on advanced computing power. In this context, semiconductors have ceased to be mere commercial products. Their production, access, and control have entered the realm of strategic sovereignty. The current global landscape indicates not that this dependency will disappear in the short term, but that it will have to be managed. In this process, the winners will not only be those who possess production capacity, but those who can align that capacity with political, military, and economic strategy. The power balances of the 21st century are now shaped less by energy routes and more by the ability to manufacture at the nanometer scale.